Welcome to In These Strange Times, a series featuring Tulsans in conversation about the individual and collective changes we're all experiencing in this year 2020 and beyond. I'm your host, Alexander Taman, and this episode is called Relationship Goals. Welcome. This is a very serious episode about relationships. Platonic relationships, romantic, familial, all of the relationships. Super important. And as I am now building a new relationship with you all, I would love to know who I am growing with. So please introduce yourselves and introduce yourselves to the beautiful people watching and enjoying. Why don't you take it away, David?
So my name is David Peebles. I didn't want to go first here.
David needs some prompts.
Yes, I need some prompts. Hello.
Hello.
And this is my wife, Meredith.
Hello. I have no prompts.
Guess I'm next. Hi, I'm Lindsay Corbett. Little background information.
Sure, that'd be great.
From Tulsa, born and raised here, went to school at OSU, came back home, so Tulsa's home for me.
Okay. Awesome.
Stuart Ashworth. I was born in Tulsa, grew up in Baton Rouge, been in Tulsa since high school, been here ever since.
Yeah, and my name is Moises Echevarria. I've lived in Tulsa for about 22 years, so Tulsa's home, but I was born and raised in Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, so glad to be here.
Welcome everyone. I'm Alex again. Excited to be here. Not from Tulsa. I am a transplant. But this is home. Been here since like 2009, 2010. So, how's it been? This has been a crazy year for sure, and it's kind of weird that it's almost over.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. I don't know. I don't know. These writers, man, they're wild. But what have your experiences been?
So ours has been very unique.
Yeah.
So Meredith and I spent about a 2-year season apart from each other when we lived in Houston.
Okay.
And so moving back to Tulsa, we were kind of reestablishing ourselves and reconnecting with people that we were very comfortable with. And then I would say probably about 3 or 4 months into the pandemic, we found out that we were pregnant with our first child.
Congratulations!
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, shit.
So it's definitely been a unique experience, and it hasn't been without challenges, but it's been really exciting.
Yeah, and I think like for me, being pregnant for the first time, I have no idea what this would be like not in a pandemic, right? But it's been isolating, frankly, because it's like, you think about, you go through these momentous life occasions, like surrounded by your community, and like we've had to do it in isolation. So like not with our families, not with our friends. And so that's definitely like pregnancy for me has been more challenging mentally as a result than it has been physically, just because we've like David and I are kind of going through it together, and he's an incredible incredible partner, but like turns out has never been pregnant. So it's like, I can't.
Should try it, bro.
Yeah.
So it's just been really interesting not having the people that I would normally have right around me to ask advice of, and it's just hard when like I don't want to just always have every text message or every communication or every interaction I have with my network be about this, but like that's what I really need right now. So it's been kind of been weird in that way for me.
For sure.
Hooray therapy, I guess is what I'd have to say to that, right?
That's real.
So.
Well, congratulations again. That's so
Thanks.
exciting. There's
Thanks.
also like dozens of couples that
Yeah.
are like, we made a life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
So awesome. Lindsay, what about you? What's this experience been
Mine's
like?
been kind of different. When the pandemic started, I was still at home, helping out. And then like halfway through, I think I was overwhelmed by being around the same people too long. So I was like, it's time to get out. So then I moved out, and now I'm all the way alone. So I think I've kind of been through both extremes, and I don't have a favorite. It's weird to be in a space with a lot of people, and I say a lot of people because I live with my parents, and then I have 2 younger siblings. And being in a space with them and still kind of feeling alone because you're used to being out with friends and being able to socialize. I'm a very sociable person, And then the extreme opposite of living by yourself, and it's like, you know, I kind of want to be around friends, and I'm an adult, so I could try it if I want, but if I want to be safe, then I can't do that. So here I am, just, you know, in a space by myself, just watching TV and like calling my mom on the phone when it's like, you live like 2 miles down the road. I should be able to just come over, but I can't because I went to work today and you've been at home. So both aspects of it have been extremely challenging for me as well.
Well, I loved it. So like I'm a homebody, so I don't like going out. I love staying home. I, you know, don't interact with people as much. Whereas like Moises, with his job, like he is back in the day, he was always out with work events, dinners, this and that. So it's been a very like good change of pace where like he's home every evening and day. So,
but it was funny because so Stuart has been working at a new job for a little bit over a year now, and in his previous job he was traveling a lot.
So like last year I was out from January to October. I was out of the city 128 days. So well over half.
And your question about space,
Yeah.
your initial question was about space. So Stuart hated traveling for work. I loved it. Like I love having the house to myself and just like everything was where I left it. And so he changed jobs and now he doesn't travel overnight anywhere or anytime. And so I was a little bit concerned about like, okay, so now he's gonna be home all the time. It's gonna be like a big adjustment. And then the pandemic happened, and so we both have been at home since March.
It has been.
Thank you, and that brings up a really, really great segue, I guess, into like the juxtaposition of closeness and space, because this has just been such a weird time. What has that been like? I like my space. I mean, I'm definitely like a homebody. Definitely love like being around people, you know, because kind of as I spoke to earlier, but like. It's one thing when you choose to be home with your significant other because of like circumstances or like that's part of your lifestyle versus like being forced by like these really, really extraordinary and extenuating circumstances to really just be relegated to home office, home, and then everything is, you know, like, what's that been like?
You know, for me, it's my typical day looks like I go into the office. There is no working remotely for the most part. And so early on, I was able to actually enjoy working remotely for about 2.5, 3 months. It was enjoyable. I got to spend time with Meredith. I got to spend time with the dogs. Since then, I've actually gone back to the office every day, and I now realize how much I miss being able to spend that time with Meredith. You know, we would have our own home offices where I would be in the kitchen and she'd be in the back office, but we'd come back together for lunch and it was enjoyable, and then we'd finish our days apart and come back together. It was because of spending time together through the pandemic that I really found how much I enjoyed that. So it was a forced closeness, if you will, but it was nice to know that after 10 years of marriage that we actually still enjoy being close together. So, you know, and I think I kind of heard you guys speak to it, is that we kind of had to pivot a little bit, right? So yeah, our nights didn't look like what they used to look like. There's been a lot of Grey's Anatomy and Blacklist, but it's been enjoyable. And when we need space apart, I go to the garage and work on things that don't need to be worked on, and she does her own thing, so.
Yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised. I mean, kind of like you guys, the situation, Moises and Stuart, you know, when we, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when we lived apart for 2 years, we got really accustomed to like having our own lives and cherishing the time we had together, but it was a very finite amount of time, and it was like very little in comparison to the totality of how we spent our time, right? And so like, not only were we just about a year under our belt of being back in the normal of spending time together, but then it was like, oh, hi, now you're gonna spend all your time together inside like 1,800 square feet. Like, Godspeed, good luck, like, let's see how this goes. And to David's point, I mean, like, I really enjoyed it, and I found myself missing him when he had to go back to work, and I was like, who the hell am I that, you're gone for, you're gone for 8 hours, and I miss you, and we've been married for 10 years and friends for a whole hell of a lot longer than that. And it's like, it was really interesting to find how you like became attached to your partner potentially in a different way than you had expected, because that was the circumstance. And but you really like ended up thriving in it, which was surprising to me.
Moises and Stuart, have you all experienced like significant transitions or just changes like in your relationships? This being the year of the pivot, like how have the relationships that you've been in just transformed in this?
So, I definitely think that, especially like with family relationships, a lot have changed, somewhat for the good. So my parents are very close, and so my mom is the type that loves to come over, but I'm like, keep telling my mom, please stay home, and she's like one of those people who just doesn't get it. So it's been I think very tough on her, but like also tough on us to like having to tell our parents like, please, like, if you come over, wear a mask. We're wearing masks.
Yeah, I'm really close with my parents, and it was really difficult at first, and especially for my mom, who's like me. She just loves relationships and being with
loves
people.
to talk.
And she's a talker. That's where I get it from. And so she was really struggling when everything shut down, like in March, April. And as a way to help her, I invited her to come and walk the dogs with me. But it was really amazing to see, for me to strengthen my relationship with my mother.
What have been like some of the biggest challenges and triumphs, because balance is super important. But yeah, what have been the challenges and triumphs that you all have experienced in these strange times?
So I think for me, the hardest part has been, not having the adult relationships. I've played team sports since I was just a little guy, and have been playing competitive rugby for the last 15 years. And so putting the whole season on hold, it was actually the weekend of varsity alumni for my OU club that the school shut it down and said, we're not going to do this. I would say for me, that's been one of the hardest things, is that was my group of guys, that was my community. And so one of the triumphs that came out of that is that I put a lot more energy into creating, but I'm not an artist. I would love to be, but I can't build anything, but I'm very handy around the house. So I've been putting a lot more effort into fixing up the projects that I started, finishing the projects that I started when we moved in last March. And so for me personally, I've kind of had to do a little bit of reframing and saying, well, this is a season of life. And it's not exactly what I'd love to be doing, but what can I do? And so it's been a big reframing year for me.
Yeah.
For me, I found myself becoming closer to the people that I work with, rather than the people that I grew up with or my friends from college. So my friend who's in med school reached out to me and she's like, I'm feeling a little neglected. Like, I'm supposed to be like super busy and you are usually like the one that reaches out to everyone and we have not heard from you. To be honest, I just totally, I don't want to say I forgot about them, because I thought about them, but not enough to the point to where I was reaching out to them.
Yeah.
So it was just like a moment of, realization. I have to reestablish those relationships with people that I've known all of my life, and make time for them, while also maintaining these new friendships from people that I really do care about just as much as I care about them now. And that's what it's about during these times, is making time for the people that you actually care about, even when it's not easy or you don't want to do it or doesn't even feel good, to be honest. Some moments you just have to do it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of intentionality.
That's Moises and Stuart. Challenges and triumphs.
So I think like for challenge, for me, like I see a major challenge more in the future is what I'm more concerned about. Is like once the pandemic is over, once there's a vaccine and we start going back, I have to do a readjustment again. So it's like the time change. It takes a while to get readjusted. So I think that's gonna be a challenge. But like I know it's gonna happen. Like I know it's like we'll make it. I'll get over it. But I think like when it does happen, like we'll have to like take extra time for us.
Yeah. When I think about some of the, I guess, triumphs of this time is that, number one, I've been able to kind of get through this and see that I'm becoming a more rounded, well-rounded individual because of these experiences. But I've done it with this guy by my side, and he has been a true confidant and counselor, and all of these things where like something happens and I'm like, oh my gosh, my world is falling apart, and he's you know, trying to formulate potential solutions and giving me from, you know, legal advice from, you know, he's an attorney, so like he's like, you know, like this and that, and so it's been just really nice, and I'm gonna miss that so much whenever I'm away, like, you know, at the office. So it's been hard. It's probably like one of the hardest times that we've had, but also some of the most rewarding times that we've had.
Yeah. Aw, you guys. Would any of you like to speak to the growth in the context of your relationships and any like healing or repairing, you know, that has taken place? Because this has just been such a year, you know, to just kind of really invest and be intentional about our relationships.
So my dad and I have always had a pretty solid relationship. Admittedly, we became a lot closer when my mom passed 10 years ago. And so my dad now lives in a retirement community in Arkansas. And so I don't get to see him very often, but it's been through, you know, some of the projects I've tried to tackle. I use my dad as a backstop for a lot, and a lot more than what I realized before. So, you know, kind of talking about the projects that I've been doing before, I find myself talking to my dad, asking him for just technical advice. But I find that it kind of goes a step further, right? So I've really found myself kind of investing in that relationship a lot more than I thought I would, especially now that, you know, we're 4 months away from having a child. My dad always told me he didn't know how to raise me. He had to read a book on how to hold me. And I can really feel that now as we're starting to try to figure out like how it is that we bring a human into the world, especially with what we've got going on. So it's been, this whole pandemic situation I feel like has helped my relationship flourish with my father, because I talk to him more frequently. Kind of like to what you alluded to before, is that, you know, I can't just drop everything and go see him, or he can't drop everything and come see me. And so there's a lot more of the communication through phone call. Dad doesn't do Zoom, he doesn't WebEx. He's got a phone, he does great with that. So, you know, I've realized that I've been a lot more intentional with that relationship, and the phone calls are actually a lot more meaningful. So for me, it's been a blessing in disguise for sure.
I'm really able to see who I want to pour into and who I want to be doing life with, and really doing everything in my power to make them feel that from me. So I think it's been a really good, maybe 180 in me, not so much like with other certain people, but within myself, to say like, what am I putting first and why, right? And like really pouring into those people for the right reasons and in the right ways. So I've noticed that for myself.
I can definitely relate. Moises and Stuart.
So I feel like in our community, we often emphasize the concept of chosen family, because as we know, there's still instances where some families are not accepting and affirming of their children, and it's been hard for me, because luckily for us, our families have been really supportive. But the last 4.5 years have been really, really hurtful. And especially being around family for family gatherings, because like all of us, you know, some family members come from different ends of the spectrum politically. And this year has been kind of healing, to be able to intentionally estrange some relationships with family members and not having to go and see them for the, you know, Thanksgiving dinner, when we know that their political ideations really attack who we are as individuals.
So I think it's also been healing, but pre-pandemic, my parents are different political suasion than us. But like every time we go around them, like I always use an opportunity to kind of like pounce on them. And they're very non-confrontational. So, you know, back in the day, like my, you know, how I attacked, you know, kind of like, you know, spoke with them changed during the pandemic, and I think it's actually been very helpful. So I think we're a little bit closer now.
Yeah. That's great. Wonderful. Can we talk about dating a little bit?
Yes.
Hey, friend.
So curious.
For some reason, I feel like that's geared toward me.
I mean, no. I'm here too. I'm here right here with you.
Yes.
Right here with you. And I definitely want to normalize being very content in singlehood, but also
Absolutely.
being like, yeah, I'm open to a relationship, but I really, really do enjoy being single.
I think that dating during a pandemic is probably one of the worst experiences you'll have when it comes to dating. Like I mentioned, you can't see people that you're
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
date. Before things got shut down, I was like on an app, I met this guy or whatever, and then like a couple of weeks later everything shut down. So we were like on opposite ends of the spectrum. He's like, oh, I don't believe it's real. Like I go to work every day, I still haven't had it. Like you can come hang out or whatever. And I'm like, I don't think that I should do that. Maybe we can like go on a walk. So it started with like, that kind of dating, going on a walk and different things like that. That one clearly didn't work out because after the walk, it was like, it's okay, like you can come to the house. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, it's a pandemic. You live with other people. You guys all work at different places. This isn't gonna work. So I think it's been challenging in that aspect. Like you can't get to know people, face to face, which is very important when you're getting to know someone.
So what does community look like? Community building in particular, when we are relegated to socially distancing, innovative and creative ways of connecting, all of that. How are we building community in these strange times?
I think that we have to still be extremely intentional. For me, I love, going on walks in my neighborhood and seeing people out on their porches or other people walking, and we've gotten to know several of our neighbors just from regularly being outside and smiling and waving, and so I know that our neighborhood is a small part of our community, but it's an important part of our community, and so I feel like we've made meaningful connections that if we were not in this situation, we would not be walking as much in our neighborhood, period. And then on the larger community, I take it really seriously to be a voice of hope and positivity in all of my social media. I guess that's my social media presence, and so just highlighting the good news that are happening and both personally and professionally through my organization. And so that's what we're doing now, but I crave human contact, so I'm longing for returning to some normalities in the next few months.
Yeah.
I think kind of building on something that both of you all said, like on a macro level, I think I've seen the shift in how I respond to community and create community really move away from like being rooted in any assumptions, right? I think we've all had to be, to your point, Moises, like way more intentional. I think we always should have been that way, right? But like, I work in philanthropy, right? And so 8 months ago, I would have never comprehended that like we would just be meeting in a professional sense, just like meeting basic needs, but like took a step back and listened to the community, and what we heard, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs, startup small businesses, right? Especially in the food and retail space. Yeah. Well, we all know that those industries have just been decimated during this season, right? And so we completely pivoted from long-term strategies to, okay, we're gonna raise $500,000 and give out $1,000 grants to restaurant workers because God knows when they're going to be back and on their feet. And like that, I know that doesn't get them from A to B, but it's at least supplementing, and trying to help in this season, right? And so, it's just, I think having to completely remove assumptions has been one of the only ways we've been able to create and establish community in this season. And hopefully that's something that propels us into the future, because I think that's a really important lesson for us all to take away from this.
Yeah, kind of playing off that too, we were always a backyard family.
Same.
We would sit in our backyard behind our fence. We have 3 dogs, so we don't want anyone to bother us. We don't want our dogs to bother you. But what we found is that we shifted to be a front porch family. And kind of in line with that, I can't tell you how many times I actually saw Stuart and Moises walking by, and I'd run out and wave and go back in. But we've kind of shifted to where we actually set up some chairs on the front porch in early pandemic, and we wanted to engage with community. There's certain houses where you see people and you're like, I don't like them. Like, well, why not? I don't know. I've never met them. I just don't like them. And then you find out that, no, those people are actually pretty cool. And so when I'm looking at engagement with community, it is on a more micro level. But I think one thing that I've kind of realized too is that, you know, you have folks that live in North Tulsa. We have friends that live over on Brookside. We have friends that live on Cherry Street. And as you continue to build those micro communities, you can find the needs of the overall community of Tulsa, right?
Yeah.
It's trying to find some joy and trying to share that joy with your community, how small or big it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And I mean, to all of your points, with intention and focusing, I think, on the micro, because that's really where it feels like we have the greatest impact. That definitely correlates with the macro. And I know, like, from my experience, like, my neighbors have just gotten, like, really neighborly, which I love, and I didn't realize. Like, I mean, I've grown up, like, in suburbs and in city and in the 90s, right? And so I was always outside, and community just felt a lot more communal, right? And like a shared experience in that everybody knew kind of everybody, and, you know, was at least familiar. Even if you didn't necessarily vibe with, like, the last house on the left, like, you knew who was over there, and, you know, and I think with this, like, my neighbors and I, which, full disclosure, like, several of us went to college together, so we're like, we're tight.
Yeah.
But, like, we've looped in other people that we've just kind of met along the way, and, like, we cook outside more, like grilling, and, you know, we're still able to socially distance. Everybody's got dogs, so, like, the kids are all playing, and, you know, they're like the neighborhood kids. And that has just really been beautiful and really, like, cup-filling. To, like, I think my final point, or the last question for you all, is, like, what gives you hope in these strange times, and with all that there is to, you know, hope for and to see? Because I think this has been a very, very polar experience. It's been an election year. People are just saying some of the most incendiary and uncouth things on social media without blinking. And that's a lot, you know, that's traumatic in and of itself, but there is always cause for hope, right? And there's always just so much resiliency and so many silver linings that have really done a great deal to balance things out for me. But I would love to hear from you all as to what gives you hope.
I am hopeful that technology will continue to shrink our world and will help us realize that we are so interconnected and that we need each other deeply. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
I would say for me, what gives me hope is seeing micro and macro level our ability as a people to adapt to change. I think it's something that change is something that I've always seen as something that happens over a long period of time. Like, oh, from this generation to this generation, this is what we were able to accomplish. But within the past 9 months, so many things have been exposed, so many things have happened. And at the drop of a hat, we've just decided, okay, we're going to do things differently. So to see that so many things have been able to change in such a short amount of time have been amazing. And it shows me that we're capable of anything. And no matter what we go through as a people, we can make it through it.
So mine feels very insular after what you said, but it sounds so lame. But, like, being pregnant during this season has been such a source of, like, hope for me as an individual, and I won't put words in your mouth, but I think us as a couple. I know for our extended family, like, you know, right after I found out I was pregnant, we called my grandmother, who's 90, and lost my grandfather, you know, her spouse of 70-something years, right? And I can't tell you what a source of hope it's been for her, right? And so, like, the fact that, like, there are parts of life that still go on during this weird time, and there are still some, like, beautiful things that are happening, and, like, the creation of life being one of those. And so that's something that's really been helpful for me, even though at times I feel all the more isolated because of it. It's also been one of the most beautiful things and been such a source of hope for me. And, like, you know, being able to hope that our child will never have to experience a season like this, right? And, you know, really thinking about intentionally how we want to parent as a result of some of the things that we've experienced as a couple this year. So that's what I would say.
I think the thing that gives me the most hope is the fact that I feel like what the pandemic has brought out is that people are willing to share and engage with one another in a way that they haven't before, because I think that the pandemic has brought out that everybody's struggling, right? And everybody's struggling in different ways. And you're not too big, too strong to admit that you are having a tough time. It gives me hope that we as a people have kind of hopefully gotten to that place where, you know, you can share joys, but you can also share tragedies. You can share what's working for you in the things that, you know, this 10 years of relationship or marriage that we've had, it hasn't always been easy, but there's been a lot of joy that's come with it. So the thing that gives me hope is that people are having those conversations, unlike what I'd seen previously, where you feel like you are the only one in the world that is dealing with a certain situation.
Yeah.
So that gives me hope.
Yeah. Aw, Stuart, we are just sharing like what gives us hope as we kind of wrap things up.
Sure.
Love to hear from you.
So echoing what David said,
Uh-huh.
like what has given me a lot of hope is that, you know, as a community, as a country, we've all been affected to some degree.
Yeah.
And seeing everyone more or less coming together, seeing a lot of things on TV where people are having food drives, people are helping their neighbors, bringing them food, visiting them. Like, it just really seems that the country as a whole, prior to this, has been so scattered and sort of so just different directions. But now, like, we're like, okay, we're all kind of on the same boat. You know, let's steer the boat together.
So thank you all for sharing. Thank you. Yeah, for your transparency, your vulnerability, candidness. This was really fun, and I hope it's been helpful. To your point, you know, you're mentioning a little catharsis, so I hope we helped you all and helped each other. I know I definitely we're gonna revisit some things because I just have more questions and I just need help. I need an adult. But yes, thank you all. Yeah, we did that, guys.
She want a deeper connection. She wanna chill in my section. She see individuality. Got a clock in my salary. She invest in my dreams. Miss me when I'm gone. Enter on the first ring. She gon' be there when I'm on. She want a deeper connection. She wanna chill in my section. She see individuality. Got a clock in my salary. She invest in my dreams. Miss me when I'm gone. Enter on the first ring. She gon' be there when I'm on. Real talk.
Highly emotional, and we not compatible. Highly irrational, highly feel my knees and worship me like I'm so godly. Diving deep, now I'm overseas. Are you still gon' like me?